One, background, context, even the history that led to the explosive moment on Friday between Trump, Vance, and Zelensky in the Oval Office. Two, what jobs will survive artificial intelligence? Let's talk to Mike Rowe. Three, Gene Hackman, Bill Murray, the Oscars, and what is left of Hollywood. It is the Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page, terrestrial radio, 36 markets across the great United States of America, but always on demand by subscribing at Apple or on Spotify. What's up, fellas? Did you have a nice weekend? Willisha?
Yes, sir.
It was good. It was good. A lot of TV watching. A lot of things on TV to watch, actually.
Really?
Maybe White Lotus, not that great, to be honest with you.
I think I'm out on White Lotus.
Yeah.
Did 2 seasons. Don't feel compelled to do a third.
You don't need to do this one, honestly. I mean, if it gets better, I'll prove me wrong, but right now it's not great. Just so much to watch on TV.
Last night was the Oscars.
Yeah.
And looking at the list of best director, best supporting actor, supporting actress, best actor, best actress, and best picture, I think I'm at about 10%, maybe 20% recognition of the movies. I mean, I know who the actors and actresses are. I do know that, or at least I'm batting closer to 50 to 70% on the names of the actors and actresses. But as far as the actual movies, I'm. Let's do that in the third segment today. I'll bet you I have heard of maybe 20% of the movies. And what a fall from grace when those used to be the Oscars, an absolute cultural milestone. Like, not the Super Bowl, but in the vein of the Super Bowl, everybody watched, everybody discussed what happened at the Oscars. I didn't watch a ton. I did start the new season of Love Is Blind with my wife, so I'm burning through some Love Is Blind.
I'm up to date.
I'm not. No, I got some stuff done on the to-do list. I did youth soccer games. Did you guys see the story out of Dallas, Texas, of the cheerleading competition that went completely south?
Yeah, what happened there?
So the convention center is downtown where the studios for not this digital version of the Will Cain Show, but the TV studio for the Will Cain Show is. And on Friday, it was really hard to park, and it was really crowded. And downtown Dallas isn't like that. It's not like New York where you circle around blocks looking for a parking spot, but it was that way on Friday. And they said, oh, it's a big cheerleading competition. So there was this huge, I don't know if it was national, regional, I don't know, but gigantic cheerleading competition at the convention center in downtown Dallas. On Saturday, fights erupted between the parents. And then someone thought they heard gunshots. There was some loud noises, so they presumed it was an active shooter. And then people came flying out of the convention center, and apparently there was a bit of a stampede. And there's guys who've recorded videos that's up on social media talking about men stampeding young kids to get out of a convention center. And he's asking, what's happened to society? Like, men are supposed to run towards an active shooter,
Right.
not trample kids like George Costanza on their way to safety. But pretty fascinating. And at my soccer games I was at with my sons this weekend, I did hear some MFers dropped from the opposing team's sidelines. But it gets heated. It gets rough. I just never knew it got so rough in cheerleading. All right, we have Mike Rowe on the show today. We're going to talk about the job market. We're going to talk about blue-collar jobs. We're going to talk about what survives AI. But I want to get to this because it was an absolutely fascinating series of events on Friday. And it deserves some context, some background, and some history. Let's get to that with story number one. Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Volodymyr Zelensky met on Friday in the Oval Office to discuss reportedly signing a mineral rights agreement between the United States and Ukraine that would be the first step towards and on the path to peace. It didn't go that way. It went south when J.D. Vance took a moment to address a reporter's question about whether or not Trump and Vance were cozying up too much to Putin and whether or not they were being too soft on Putin. Vance began to answer that this is diplomacy, and he was interrupted by Zelensky. Watch.
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are
Mr.
not
President,
strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful
to
come to the Oval Office of the United
answer.
States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
Hello?
Such a fascinating moment. So, first, Vance is distinguishing to the reporter the difference between the way the Trump-Vance administration is approaching the path to peace than the Biden administration. He said the Biden administration is and was strong on words and short on action, and pounding your chest would be a way to control Vladimir Putin. He said that they believe that statesmanship is engaging in diplomacy, talking to both sides, and finding a negotiable compromise that leads to peace. From there, Zelensky says, excuse me, JD, let me ask you, what do you mean by diplomacy? And then he engages in a historical lesson on the number of times that Putin has violated ceasefires and engaged in what he says is false diplomacy, leading the conversation down the path of, I need security guarantees, I need promises from Europe and the United States that you're going to enforce this peace. Otherwise, I'm going to be down the same path that I have been before with Vladimir Putin. Now, for a moment, let's set aside right and wrong. Let's talk about pure strategy. Everyone's goal in that meeting is aligned. It is to get a mineral rights agreement, which would provide further funding to Ukraine. It's what Vance wants. It's what Trump wants. It's what Zelensky wants. Zelensky wants more, but he does want this first step in protecting his people, the Ukrainians. What he makes I think he makes two gigantic mistakes. First, reading the room. Zelensky has walked through the world over the past 3 years as a adored figure. He's walked into every parliament of every European nation. He's been given medals. He's been clapped and applauded. He's been given standing ovations and treated as though he's a hero. That includes the United States of America under the Biden administration. But things have changed in the United States. He hasn't read the room. The animating political force in the United States is MAGA, Make America Great Again, which prioritizes the interest of Americans first. And among that group of people, it does not and has not been argued successfully how funneling money into Ukraine to protect Ukraine serves the American interest. That case has not been litigated. That argument has not been won. That contingent of the American voter, which is ascendant and maintains power as manifested democratically through J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, does not see how it serves America first. So Zelensky walks into this room not being able to read the dynamics of power and the direction of the United States of America. Second, he is caught not on strategically what is best for Ukraine, but morally what he believes is right for Ukraine. I don't begrudge Zelensky how he views history or the current situation, that they're the good guy and Putin is the bad guy. He says as much in his interview subsequent with Brett Baer on Fox News Channel. He addresses that Donald Trump wants to remain neutral in these negotiations. That's the path to peace. He goes, I wish he would be more on our side. Zelensky also says that it is the one who starts war that must pay for war. Now, that sounds good, and it might set off your endorphins in terms of a moral premise, but it's simply false. It's not historically literate or true. It's he who loses war pays for war. That's just the way it is. It's been that way from time immemorial. And at a minimum right now, Ukraine is not winning the war. Maybe they're not yet fully losing, but they are not winning the war. So if you want peace, you can't go into it litigating who is morally right and who is morally wrong. You have to litigate it from a premise of reality and how you end the bloodshed. But from there, it goes even further south, as Zelensky seems to try to suggest that our moral interests between Ukraine and the United States are aligned, and Ukraine's security is the security of the United States. Watch.
We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this.
I'm not
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influenced.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influenced.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position.
You
don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. But right now, you don't. Yeah, you're playing cards.
Mr. President.
You're playing cards.
Serious.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's
with
back
all respect to you.
Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once?
A lot of times.
No, in this
even
entire
today,
meeting, you said thank
even
you.
Today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America.
What's fascinating, there's so much interesting about these moments, and I'm more interested in the substance and the history. But just stylistically, I find it fascinating how Donald Trump is willing to share the stage. I really do. And because it's such the antithesis of the way that he's been painted in public. Oh, that he has a fragile ego and he's a narcissistic egomaniac. Well, okay, if he is, I think it's fairly odd for a narcissistic egomaniac to so willingly share the floor with, say, Elon Musk. And in this case, in dealing with perhaps the world's #1 geopolitical issue, so eagerly and willingly to share the stage with J.D. Vance. Second, it's clear that loyalty is so important to this administration. I think that Donald Trump is primarily upset with the fact that Zelensky has gone after J.D. Vance. Like, he has Vance's back. Now, there's substantively, he didn't like Zelensky saying, you know, you have your two beautiful oceans, but one day you too will feel the way we feel in Ukraine. Trump wants nothing to do with that pessimistic view of the future of the United States. Nothing. He hates that sales pitch, and he is clearly appalled that Zelensky would suggest that from the Oval Office. But really what you hear there with the whole you don't have the cards is the collision of realpolitik, reality, versus a moral argument Zelensky is trying to make about good guys and bad guys. You don't have the cards. Now, let's take a moment just really quickly and understand the argument on good guys and bad guys. I find the history fascinating, and it quickly devolves into screaming matches and alternative visions of history. So I do believe it comes down to this. One side believes that Vladimir Putin is the reincarnation of Hitler, and he wants to reestablish the previous borders of the Soviet Union by rolling through Eastern Europe. He won't stop at Ukraine. He'll go on then into Poland. And from Poland, he'll go on into the Baltic states. Okay, that's one version of history. I find that version of history unconvincing. It, to me, is a bit of emotional blackmail, and as though history can only exist through the prism of 1935 through 1985. All we have for history is World War II and the subsequent Cold War, and everything is an analogy of only those two events in history. What more, listen to this from Senator Chris Murphy and how he describes what went down in the Oval Office.
So it is absolutely shameful what is happening right now. The White House has become an arm of the Kremlin. Every single day, you hear from the National Security Advisor, from the President of the United States, from his entire national security team, Kremlin talking points. For the last week, the White House has been pretending as if Ukraine started this war. That's essentially saying that Poland invaded Germany at the beginning of World War II. There are still facts in this world. And the fact is this: Vladimir Putin is a brutal dictator. Russia started this war. And the entire pretext for that meeting yesterday was an attempt to rewrite history in order to sign a deal with Putin that hands Putin Ukraine. That is disastrous for U.S. national security.
All right, you have it all in one clip from the Democratic senator from Connecticut. You have the ad hominem attack that you're an arm of the Kremlin and you're a Putin apologist should you engage in debate. And that is literally what I mean. Should you engage in debate about this war? You also have the analogy to World War II, invoking Poland and Germany. And you have an emotional blackmail, an emotional appeal to the American electorate, which I think, as I heard from The View this morning as well, and Whoopi Goldberg, is totally out of touch with the American voter. They, too, like Zelensky, haven't read the room of the animating political force in America and what they believe about Ukraine and foreign wars, MAGA. But on one hand, while you have Chris Murphy making that argument, which I find unappealing and unpersuasive, you have on the other side, yes, some facts about history. And I want to share with you some of these facts, which I do think are undebatable about history, providing you the way it is read from both sides. In 1990, at the fall of the Soviet Union, there was a declaration of sovereignty in Ukraine. And with that, an agreement by the Ukraine to de-arm its nuclear arsenal. Ukraine had an estimated 1,900 strategic warheads and 176 intercontinental ballistic missiles and 44 strategic bombers. They were a nuclear power by proxy of the Soviet Union because they were a member of the Soviet Union. To give up this nuclear arsenal back to Russia, Ukraine did receive security guarantees from the United States and from Russia that would protect the sovereignty of Ukraine. Okay? In the alternative, this also happened in 1990. With the fall of the Soviet Union, George H.W. Bush, President of the United States, made a promise to Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev that in exchange for reunifying Germany, the Soviet Union giving up East Germany, NATO would not, quote, move 1 inch eastward. It is simply a fact that Russia views NATO as a direct threat to its national security and sovereignty. What has happened since? Well, in 1999, after Bill Clinton championed the expansion of NATO, the Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland joined NATO. In 2004, Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, those three countries who share a direct border with Russia, plus Romania, Slovakia, and Slovenia joined NATO. You have significantly marched east. In 2009, Albania and Croatia joined NATO. In 2017, Montenegro joined NATO. In 2020, North Macedonia joins NATO. In 2023, Finland, which also shares a border with Russia, joins NATO. And in 2024, Sweden joins NATO. What more, in 2014, the Maidan Revolution takes place in Ukraine. This is where a Russian sympathetic president, Viktor Yanukovych, was elected president and focused much of the Ukraine policy towards the east, towards Russia. The Ukrainian parliament and their elements inside of Ukraine wanted to continue to position Ukraine to the west, economically and even strategically and militarily. But after the Maidan Revolution, which was a color revolution, marching in the street, Independence Square in Kiev, Yanukovych was driven out of Kiev. And as such, the Russians viewed it as a coup in Ukraine. How much role did the CIA play? Well, the United States government, we do have a leaked call from Victoria Nuland to the then American ambassador to Ukraine, where they were discussing who they want to be in place in the government of Ukraine. This wasn't limited to Ukraine. Similar stories took place in Georgia. Similar stories are now taking place today in Romania. The question is Vladimir Putin trying to reestablish the boundaries of the Soviet Union and march deeper into Europe, or has NATO encroached upon the security and sovereignty of Russia by expanding to Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Georgia, Ukraine, and any leader, and it doesn't have to be megalomaniac, would-be Hitlerian Vladimir Putin. But any leader in Russia would view it as a threat in the same way we would view China setting up shop within the governments of Canada or Mexico. This isn't about moral high ground to me. This isn't about anything other than strategically understanding the reality of the world. And I can see how Russia would look at the way of this map and go, wow, we need to be careful here. This is a real threat to Russia. To the moral argument of anybody can be able to join NATO that wants to join NATO, ask yourself if that's really what's happening. Independent movements in each country, and whoever will be, regardless of the outcome of potential war. I would ask one final question. What is the end result? What is the end goal of the war in Ukraine? Because I can only see two. If you don't want peace, I can only see two. If you think it's capitulation to deal with Vladimir Putin, if you think it's surrender to give up any existing reality on the ground circumstances, I can only see two. One, you continue to fund that war forever, and this has been said out loud, and it's a proxy war that never endangers an American soldier's lives, and yet at the same time weakens a quote-unquote American enemy in Russia. You're trying to create Afghanistan 2.0, talking about the Afghanistan-Russian war that bled the Soviet Union out over the mid to late 80s and helped contribute to the economic collapse of the Soviet Union. Are you trying to create something similar, a forever war for Russia in Ukraine, in which case Ukrainian bodies are just fed to the meat grinder to deplete Russia? Or are you trying to truly roll back the borders to the pre-existing lines of the invasion and possibly invite Ukraine into NATO or put British troops, that's the UK now going to put British troops on the ground in Ukraine, lives in jeopardy, triggering World War III through NATO? I think Vladimir Zelensky actually would prefer option B. I don't think he wants option A, to continue to bleed out Ukraine forever. I think that's why he wants Ukraine to join NATO. I think he wants the support of the rest of the world because he can't win otherwise. And I don't begrudge him for protecting his people, but I do think he wants World War III because World War III is what wins for him. Everything else is a loss. But just like Zelensky advocates for Ukraine, I like it when an American leader stands up and advocates for America. All right, what does the AI world mean for the future of jobs? Who better discuss it with than Mike Rowe, coming up on The Will Cain Show. What does AI do to the job market for the future of America? It is The Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page. Hit subscribe at Apple or Spotify, please, or on YouTube, and join us every Monday through Thursday at 12 o'clock Eastern Time. Joining us now is the CEO of MikeroweWORKS Foundation. You can find him on X at mikeroweWORKS. It is Mike Rowe. What's up, Mike?
Will Cain, I'm just living the dream, or whatever this is, and congratulations on your new digs and all that you're doing. Couldn't be happier for you.
Thanks, man. I need some dudes that swing some hammers to come in there and build my new studio. That's what I need.
Good luck with that.
This should be happening in the next couple of weeks. Yeah? Hard to find?
Good luck with that. Yeah, man. I talk a lot about hammers. You know, I have for 16 years. It goes all the way back to 2009 when I wrote an open letter to Barack Obama, who had just won the election. And you're old enough to remember the Highway Infrastructure Act and 3 million shovel-ready jobs. That was the headline. And, you know, it just occurred to me that creating 3 million shovel-ready jobs is one thing. Convincing a country that has a busted relationship with the notion of picking up a shovel is something else altogether. And that sent me on this weird journey of the skills gap and the will gap, if you will, and why it's possible to have so many people out of work at the same time we have so many open opportunities. It's a heck of a thing. And if you haven't experienced with building out your studio, I'll bet you some people listening know exactly what I'm talking about.
Hey, Mike, have you thought about this? How much of that problem, which you just said, the skills to work and the will to work, is a natural byproduct of a transitioning economy. So I think back, okay, I've compared this technological / AI revolution to the Industrial Revolution. So the Industrial Revolution is incredibly disruptive to the economy and people's lives, with a huge benefit, though. Like long term, improves everyone's lives. But there's a bunch of people who would have been left behind in that transition of the economies, who whatever their skills were or whatever they did for a living didn't want to or couldn't transition into what the world needed now. How much of that is what's going on in America? So like either not, we do know we still need blue collar jobs,
Sure.
but the will part of what you said, the skills and the will, like too many people are looking at it like, well, that's not the future. Look at the future of the economy. Look where we're going. I'm going to get caught making horse buggy whips when we've all moved on to the car.
Yeah. There's always going to be that disruptive sense and the uncertainty that comes with the inevitability of change. When we went from an agrarian society to an industrial society, there was massive upheaval and tons of confusion about, never mind work, meaningful work. And the definition of a good job was completely up for grabs. Well, it still is. That never really changes. There's a long list of stuff we can't control, including the advent of new tech. But something we can control is the way we look at work, our macroeconomic association with work, the way we think about unions, the way we think about all of these things that are adjacent to this. That to me anyway is separate from how many jobs are open versus how many people are able to take them. I think that the big mistake a lot of people make when they just look at all of this at a glance is, for instance, right now we have 7.6 million open jobs that don't require a 4-year degree. A lot of them are six-figure jobs, and most of the rest lead to six figures. But be that as it may, those jobs are open, and employers are struggling mightily to fill them. But at the same time, we have 7.2 million, according to Nicholas Eberstadt and his great book, Men Without Work, 7.2 million able-bodied men who are not only not working, they are not looking for work. They're out. And that is new. We've never seen that number, at least in peacetime, before. So we've got a huge chunk of the workforce who's simply out. We have a ton of opportunity that employers are struggling to fill. And we also have some really terrible math going on that doesn't get nearly enough press. And that's the simple fact that for every 5 tradesmen who will retire this year, 2 will replace them. 5 out, 2 in. It's been like that for maybe 12 years. So when you take the math, when you combine it with the stigmas and the stereotypes and the myths and the misperceptions that have kept a whole generation from giving the skilled trades an honest look, and then put the cherry on top, 7.2 million dudes who have just decided, no, it's not for me. By the way, according to the research, a lot of those guys are spending the vast majority of their time not volunteering for civil organizations or doing anything with their church. They're on their screens, right? So all of this, to my way of thinking, is just a big, hot mess of data that really says something about our country that's not terribly flattering, but we can't ignore it. We have to look at it, because the only other thing that I didn't mention in that whole witch's brew is $1.7 trillion in student debt, which is still on the books. And yet, as you've heard me say before, we're lending money we don't have to kids who are never going to be able to pay it back, to train them for these jobs that really don't exist anymore. The whole thing is a tautology. Somebody's got to ring the alarm bell, because the biggest companies in the country are all struggling to recruit like never before.
Give me some examples of the jobs. The jobs we can't fill, they're sitting empty. The 5 tradesmen that retire, we only have 2 to take their place. The gap you talked about, the 7 million jobs. What are we talking about?
Well, in my foundation, I draw the line between jobs that require a 4-year degree and jobs that don't. It's pretty broad, but when I look at all of those 7.6 million open positions, the vast majority don't require a 4-year degree. So we we try to help people who approach those fields. It ranges from welding, steam fitting, pipe fitting. Electric is huge right now, heating, air conditioning, all the way over to cosmetology and healthcare. There's just a ton of opportunities that, for whatever reason, have been relegated to the vocational consolation prize column. You know,
Right.
That's the part of our workforce that's in trouble. But here's a better answer. And this is anecdotal, but I've got 100 stories like it. I just got off the phone with the Blue Forge Alliance. Are you familiar with them at all?
No.
Most people have never heard of the Blue Forge Alliance. They oversee something called the Maritime Industrial Base, which consists of 15,000 individual companies who are collectively charged with building and delivering 3 nuclear-powered submarines to the U.S. Navy every year, a couple Virginia and a Columbia class. Will, these things are monumentally complicated, and they are now the tip of the spear for our national defense. Things go hypersonic with China. Our aircraft carriers are in a world of hurt, right? So these submarines are really, really important, and maintaining that cadence is really critical. This guy from Blue Forge calls and says, we need to hire some tradespeople pretty quick. Can you help us? And I said, well, it's pretty skinny out there. How many do you need? He says, I'm not making this up. He says, 100,000. 100,000. Now, this is over a period of 7-8 years, but they need 30 or 40,000 tradespeople right now. And his next question was, we've looked everywhere. We can't find them. Do you know where they are? And I said,
Wasn't
yeah.
he welders?
Welders, I said, I can tell you exactly where they are. They're in the 8th grade. You have to start your recruiting process way earlier than you think. And I've said the same thing to the automotive industry. They've got 70,000 open positions right now for auto techs and collision and repair. You can go down the list, man. And the number of big companies who are competing for the same pool of willing talent who wants to learn a skill that's in demand, it's kind of scary. Because now it's not just, oh, these companies can't hire and, oh, these people are sitting home not working. It's not that. It's more like, how long do you want to wait for the electrician to come to your home? How long do you want to wait for your studio to be built? And how do you feel about a national defense program that depends on nuclear-powered submarines that we can't deliver? Everybody's got skin in the game.
So what's going on? Why? I mean, you know, it's kind of interesting. What you're describing is kind of interesting in that we often talk about, and Trump talks about, we got to bring manufacturing back to the United States. There's a lot of reasons for that, but part of it is we should be creating jobs in the United States that we're not creating somewhere else. But listening to you, we have unfilled jobs now. That, by the way, if you're a corporate CEO going, I want to bring my jobs back to the United States, I'd be nervous listening to Mike Rowe right now. I'd be like,
I would too.
Am I going to find a workforce?
No, you're not. You're going to have to create it. And look, this is unpleasant for me because I've got my personal opinions. I got my personal politics. I leave them out of my foundation. mikeroweWORKS is an agnostic look at opportunity. But there's no getting around the fact that there are 400,000 or 500,000 open positions in manufacturing right now. Now, I'm rooting for the president. I want to see massive reshoring. I want to see American manufacturing reinvigorated, and I want to see millions of jobs created around that effort. But you have to ask the question. It's why I brought up Obama in the first few seconds. We need to learn something from his inability to fill 3 million shovel-ready jobs. Creating them is different than filling them. So while I'm rooting for the president, I would ask Howard Lutnick. I would ask all of them. Elon, I'm asking them now. What is the plan for the workforce? Please don't put your head in the sand with regard to that question, because look, like I said, it's a hard question to ask because it's an unpleasant question to answer. But if our country doesn't have the will, if the workforce isn't there, then part of unraveling this puzzle is to make a persuasive national effort to support the very jobs the president is hoping to create, as well as a long list of jobs that are wide open right now. We ignore that at our peril.
Well, let's back up real quick. So what's the problem? I mean, you think about this all the time. Why, and we're primarily talking about men, not exclusively, but primarily, why are young men not taking those jobs or pursuing those career paths, Mike?
So if I
you're
were
going
on
to fix
show
that eighth
where
grader,
the goal,
oh wait, we got to answer that question, right? To fix it so that eighth grader does choose it.
That's right. That's right. And that's if we're gonna talk about that kid, then the answer to your question is we simply need to make a more persuasive case for the opportunities exist. It's PR. I hate to say it like that because PR sounds kind of marginal and glib, but it matters, man. You've got to remember, when we took shop class out of high schools, we sent a clear and present message to a whole generation of kids and their parents. We said these jobs, they're not even worth looking at, right? Like walking from English class to math class in the 1970s, you could at least stick your head in metal shop or wood shop or auto shop and see something that looked like work happening there. And who knows, maybe that made sense to your brain. And so a path was created early on in middle schools and high schools for these jobs. When we took all that stuff away, we put a very specific set of blinders on. And then if you look at the way these jobs are portrayed in pop culture, most people still think of a plumber, you see a 300-pound dude with a giant butt crack. We have decades of visual reinforcements of all those kinds of stereotypes. When I tell people they can make mid-six figures welding, there's still a giant cohort who just says bullcrap. You can't do that. That's not possible. And then when I show them the 2,200 people that we've assisted who are doing that very thing, they still don't quite believe it. So if you're talking about how to dissuade a whole generation of kids that these myths are in fact myths, you have to show them real life proof. You have to show them evidence that demands a verdict. That's what we try and do at mikeroweWORKS. But remember, there are a couple different things. There's the persuasion angle for the kids we're talking about. There's the demographic mathematical angle that I can't do anything about. I don't. I mean, other than tell people to have more kids, which is not really my thing. I don't know what to say about that, but those numbers are real. And then there's this sociological thing that's happening with so many men. And I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, but if we're going to talk about what's going on with them, then you got to bring Nicholas Eberstadt into the conversation because the research is voluminous and it's a little beyond my pay grade. But I do know this, Will, it's all of a piece and it's all happening at the same time. And this is a multi-front war that's going to have to be waged on more than one front.
What's of those jobs, Mike? I always hear welding brought up, by the way.
Yeah.
And lately, I've been hearing guys talking about plumbing as well, like good money in plumbing. Electrician, yes. I've heard this, Mike. You want to be in a licensed trade because illegal immigration will destroy your earnings capacity if you're in a trade that isn't, quite honestly, regulated. And that's what the license is. The license is a regulation. And we could have a libertarian argument on whether or not they should all be licensed or not. But it is protected from illegal immigration taking many of these blue-collar jobs. What is the most... for me, my prism would be I'm ambitious. I want to do this. I like it. It's fulfilling work, but I also am ambitious. I want to make a really good living. Which ones are the answers to that? Where you make a really good living doing this type of work?
Well, look, I left this out, and shame on me, because there are two other qualities that often get sort of arbitraged out of the skilled trades conversation. One is an entrepreneurial spirit, which you clearly possess, and a lot of tradespeople do as well. The second is the willingness to go to where the work is. Both those things used to be kind of baked in, right? I mean, all the way back to Manifest Destiny, we're a people who move. And then And then we became a people who didn't. We became weirdly sedentary. You know, I award work ethic scholarships, and not everybody who applies gets one. In fact, it's kind of you got to jump through some hoops with me. And this is part of the answer to your question. I don't know how to help everybody. A, I don't have the resources to, and B, if I'm being honest, I really don't want to. I don't want to help people who fundamentally see the world differently than I do. I wish them well. We can be friends, but I'm stingy with my money. We're giving away $2.5 million this month. And I want to give it to people who are willing to go to where the work is. And I wanted to give it to people who are open to a life in freelance. I mean, that's not determinative. I've helped people who are in the plumbers union, who are in the iron workers union, steel workers union, the electrical union. I got no problem with any of that. But my approach to all of this starts not with labor, but with work. They're different. You know, when you start to talk about labor and you can't say labor without saying management, right? And the minute you frame the conversation that way, then you just got pulled into a different kind of fight. It's an important fight. Workers' rights are important. I got some skin in that game, but this conversation is bigger. It's not simply about what are the best terms that can be negotiated between that employer and that employee. This goes to the heart of what made our country great, the willingness to go to where the work is, to show up early, to stay late, to climb the rungs. I mentioned welding a lot, and you brought it up, and I do it because it's like the gateway drug of the skilled trades. It's a way into a world. If you know how to weld, you can stay in the welding world. There are half a dozen different types of welding. I've helped underwater welders who are making $300,000 tax-free a year over in the Gulf of Oman right now. But I've also helped a few who just want to stay in their lane and do their thing, and they'll make their 80 grand a year, and they have their families. They're happy. And then I've helped guys with a welding certificate and women who have gone on to buy a couple of vans and hire a couple of friends, the electrician, the plumber, the HVAC, and now there's a mechanical contracting company that's doing $3, $4, $5 million a year. And I can track the success of that small business back to an ambitious person who wanted to learn a skill that's in demand. The problem, Will, is you can't paint with too broad a brush. I mean, I don't know exactly who I'm talking to right now. I don't know exactly who is listening. Right? It's really, I'll leave you with this, unless you want to keep talking. I got all day, but the cookie cutter advice.
I got one more question.
The cookie cutter advice is what's killing us. Cookie cutter advice, like everybody's got to go to college or they're screwed. That's what got us
no doubt
$1.7 trillion in debt. That's what led to the skills gap. That's what's led to this whole jacked up hierarchy of good jobs, bad jobs, dirty jobs, vocational consolation prizes, and so forth. We're unfortunately a bit more complicated than that.
Exactly. I believe that. College is a default instead of a choice. I'm sure you think about this. What is AI going to do? That's not unique to blue collar jobs. It's every job is sitting there asking themselves that question. And maybe the answer is the kind of jobs we're talking about are more insulated from AI than, even attorneys or whatever that AI can do. But I'm sure you think about that. Sure. Like, what happens here with AI and what you're working on?
Okay. My honest answer is I don't know. My fun answer is, do you mean artificial intelligence or artificial insemination? Because I spent 22 years doing the other AI on dirty jobs, and I can talk about that forever. But if you're talking about the intelligence, on the one hand, I don't really think history repeats itself the way people say it does. It rhymes a lot, but I think if you're really curious about what might happen, just Google the Luddite rebellion and read about the weavers and the loomers in England and about what happened to the textile industry when disruptive technology came in. And I think you'll see that rhymes with virtually every kind of new tech. whether it's agrarian tech or industrial tech or now computer tech or it's. I'm also struck too by something else that always accompanies the new tech, and that is a chorus of people saying, this time it's different. And let me tell you why. And it's always convincing. It's always compelling. But then something happens. Some kind of dark matter that I can't quite describe coalesces around the humanity of the thing and the robotics of the thing and the big tech of the thing, and something greater than the sum of its parts came out the other side, and lo and behold, people are not unemployed. New opportunities, new ways of thinking, things always result. And I'm not smart enough to tell you what those things are going to be, but I am willing to say that I agree with you about the direct impact on jobs as we understand them today. AI is not going to replace your plumber, your electrician. It's not going to replace your HVAC guy. It's not going to replace the people who need to swing the hammers that are going to build your studio there. That's just simply not going to happen. Now, it might shape it. It might impact it. Obviously, I was out on a field call not long ago with a tech that my foundation helped over at Caterpillar, working on a big bulldozer in the field because, you can't put those things up on a lift, obviously. And I said, what's your most important tool these days? And without hesitating, he held up his iPad and sometimes the iPhone. Because what he does, he gets under there and he turns that thing on and he's live streaming or communicating back with the shop and showing them the problem. The thing's being diagnosed right in front of him, Now, that's not AI, but AI is going to facilitate that further still. It's going to impact everything. Right. I just don't know precisely how. I wish I did.
Mike Rowe, mikeroweWORKS Foundation, CEO of that. Awesome conversation as always, Mike. Appreciate you, man. Thanks for spending so much time with us.
Shameless plug, $2.5 million up for grabs, mikeroweWORKS.org. We're giving it away all month to anybody who can qualify and who genuinely wants to learn a skill that's in demand. Go get some.
There we go. Love it. All right, Mike. Thanks so much, man.
Thanks, Will.
All right, take care. There he goes, Mike Rowe. Go get that $2.5 million. So much there to think about. I want to look up the Luddite rebellion. I may do that during the commercial break, and we're going to talk about the Oscars when we come back on the Will Cain Show. How many Oscar movies could you name? I mean, I know you don't care. Neither do I. But there's a reason we don't care, in part because could you even name 20% of the movies nominated for Best Picture? It's the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page. Just had Mike Rowe of the mikeroweWORKS Foundation here on the show. He said, look up the Luddite rebellion. We're talking about technological change and the effect it has on the workforce. There's an AI, I guess it's Google Gemini, an AI explanation of the Luddite rebellion. The Luddite rebellion was a series of protests and riots in England in the early 1800s against new industrial machinery. The protests were led by textile workers, or Luddites, who were angry at the loss of jobs and lower wages. Causes: industrial revolution. New technology threatened skilled workers. Economic climate. The Napoleonic Wars created a harsh economic climate with high unemployment and inflation. Working conditions. New machinery allowed for cheaper and less skilled workers to replace skilled workers. And then what did the Luddites do? They sent threatening letters to employers. They broke into factories to destroy new machinery. They attacked employers. And they met at night to practice military drills. The British government used the army to suppress the Luddites, including mass trials and hangings. Here we go. You guys have heard it, right? The term Luddite is now used to describe people who oppose technological change. I never knew where that came from. Maybe I'm a dummy. I've used it. Luddites. Never knew why. Now I do. The Luddite rebellion. Did you guys know that, by the way? Did you guys know that's where Luddite came from?
Yeah, totally.
That term?
Yeah. I use it all the time to describe my parents. In front of them, too. Not just on air. Kidding.
No, but you knew the history?
No.
I was gonna say,
Absolutely not.
Had you used that term Luddite, don't be a Luddite. You never heard that?
I've used it. Yeah.
James, you never heard that?
It's like
James, you never heard that?
It's like snap finger. Like, I heard that somewhere, right? What does it mean? Who's that guy?
Yeah. But
I assumed it was like a branch of the Amish.
Luddites? Yeah,
that makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that. But no.
It was like yeoman's work. I was like yeoman's work. That was a good one. That was remind me of Luddite.
What's yeoman?
Like doing
the
lion's share of the work.
That's what a yeoman did?
Yeah, it's an old term. Yeah, doing like most of the work, carrying the load.
This is a very Cody Tucker thing we're doing right now. This is what Cody Tucker does.
Yeah.
You take something, you know, you take something that you say and you're loosely think you're familiar with, but you're not really. And then he gives you the history of how you got there. Like where the word denim came from or jeans, why they're called those things.
Should have him back on to talk about this.
Actually, has he done a video on why jeans are blue? Like that's what I find that fascinating.
That is interesting.
It's a random color.
It is.
Why are jeans blue? And of course, we're all going to be like, well, blue's better. Yeah, but if we had worn green jeans our entire life, we'd think that's what color jeans were supposed to be. But
blue
no,
is a very new thing. Blue didn't exist for a long time.
It's because of indigo dye.
Yeah, but why use indigo dye?
Yeah, but why'd they use indigo dye?
This made them more appealing to workers, originally miners and cowboys, because they didn't get dirty and they would age well, so you could just keep wearing them out.
Interesting.
Wouldn't green satisfy that as well? Like a dark, not like a like what you're wearing there 2 days. Is that a green denim jacket you're wearing?
It's green khaki material, but green, yes.
So indigo was one of the most widely available natural dyes in the 19th century, and it was also the most cost-effective choice. So Levi Strauss and Jacob Davis were like, all right, let's do that.
Levi.
That makes sense. Cheap. Cheap and readily available. Okay, the Oscars were last night, and I watched for a minute. I don't want to be the conservative show that's just like... Man, forget these people and their expensive gift bags. But I got to be real about how I feel about it. I was watching last night and I said to my wife, and she agreed, like, is there another industry that takes themselves more seriously than actors and actresses?
Just the way they clap.
Like they celebrate their good work and give victory speeches as though they just won the Battle of Waterloo. You know what I mean? Like, and I get it. Like, there was a time where we're like, oh, that was an amazing performance in Jack Nicholson, you know. But there's not another profession, except maybe what I do. Because I started thinking, like, news gives Emmys. Because my son's like, do they do one for TV? And I'm like, yeah, they do. It's called the Emmys. He goes, do they do it for news? And I was like, yeah, they actually have a news Emmy. Yeah. And he goes, oh, could you ever get that? And I was like, zero chance. No chance whatsoever.
You don't know that.
And then I'd explain that I do know that, Dan. I do know that.
You're climbing the charts.
And I had to explain to him why. Because it's not a real award show. He's like, well, I don't understand. Like, millions of people watch. It's more than the others. I'm like, it's not what it's about. It's about in the club.
I love that.
But
it's learning about the world.
Maybe news people take themselves, I don't know, though.
Not like that.
Actors and actresses, I would suggest maybe even more than musicians, right? Like, take themselves seriously for the work that they're doing. Go ahead, 2 days.
Yeah, they'll win an award and kind of be like, you know, we're just giving a voice to blah, blah, blah. And, you know, this is the tone they take. And they talk like this, like they just cured cancer and the world is going to be saved. And then it's just, you know, they got like best sound design or something.
And they always clap as if like the camera's on them and like everyone's going to be looking for it. Like you just see the emotion of it and you're like, can't you just like clap like yourself? Like, do you have to put on a performance?
It's a club.
Because somebody like said a line, but it's also like, it's very clear that like they know that is what they're supposed to be doing when those certain lines are said.
Mm-hmm.
It's a club of narcissism.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm not trying to indict them all, but there is a commonality to the personality types that get in there. By the way, there is in my business as well. And they're very much overlapped. It's like egotism, insecurity, bottomless pit of affirmation needed, right? that's both of those things. But the actors get it more. They get the affirmation. And so that creates, I think, a really complicated, malignant form of narcissism.
I mean, it's a big deal.
I don't know.
Winning an Oscar is a big deal.
Yeah.
I'm not taking away from that. These movies are
Is it?
crazy.
Well, was it the writer's strike?
It was.
I think it
was.
It is one of the most prestigious things in arts and science. In arts.
Do you think it's been watered down?
In what way?
I was thinking about that last night, 2
this
days.
year, I think.
In what way do you mean watered down? Like in
I am
in
always
pop culture?
willing. I'm always willing to accept that my time has passed. Like my time where pop culture was made for me. Do you know what I mean? And it's my contemporaries in pop culture. And I like Zoe Saldana, but I watched her win, right? Supporting actress. And I did think, I liked, and this is not personal, I like her.
Mm-hmm.
Is she the same prestige now as Jack Nicholson? Do you see what I'm saying? Or whoever else? Gene Hackman?
Because when Mick Jagger walked out there, like, you could tell he just had so much more of a presence than everybody else getting an award. And you could see it even in the audience reaction. They were way
But is that
louder.
an old guy thing?
That's just his.
Is that an old guy thing
That's
to
just
say?
his line of work.
I think he's more monoculture.
No.
Like, everybody knows him. I don't know.
That's the
all
Rolling
these
Stones,
names.
are the most famous band of all time ever.
Yeah.
Who won Best Actor? Adrian Brody, right?
Yep.
And who won Best
Adrian Brody's amazing.
Actress?
Mikey Madison, who's a new and up and coming actor.
Never heard of her.
I know,
Never heard of her.
but she's very,
like
very
zero,
new.
not once.
This was her breakout role.
Let me ask you this: who else is a comp on that? Matt Damon? Did he win an actor? Or he won writing for Good Will Hunting, right?
Yeah.
Who won an Best Actor or Actress as their breakout role, and then did they go on to big time stuff? And I guess that's what I'm having trouble with. Like, I don't know who that person is.
Would that be
And I
Lee?
picked on Zoe Saldana because I knew who she was. Actually, she's this other person. I don't even know who that is, nor the movie she was in.
Would that be Leo?
Here, while you're looking that up, let's do this. I want you to name Best Picture nominees. I want to see how many I've even heard of.
Okay.
Okay? Or seen. I'll give you how many I've seen, but even next, how many I've heard of.
All right. So Honora with Mikey Madison, who won Best Actress, is one. Have you heard of that?
Never heard of it.
Okay.
No idea what it's about. Never heard of it.
The Brutalist. That was Adrian Brody's film.
Before last night, I'd never heard of it.
A Complete Unknown, which I feel like you would like, Bob Dylan movie.
I've heard of it.
Okay.
I've heard of it. Yep. Bob Dylan. I didn't see it.
Conclave about the popes.
I've heard of it. Haven't seen it. That's two I've heard of.
Okay. Dune Part 2.
There's one.
Heard it and saw it.
Okay.
So what am I up to? Three heard of, one watched.
Amelia Perez.
Never heard of it.
Okay. That was the Zoe Saldana one. I'm Still Here, which was a foreign film, so probably not.
Nope. Never heard of it.
Nickel Boys.
Never heard of it.
The Substance. That was a pretty big one.
Never heard of it.
That was Demi Moore. She won a lot of awards.
Never
for it.
heard of it.
And then Wicked.
I saw I saw her in Landman. I know she was in Landman,
for
but
a second. Yeah.
I didn't see it. Her movie, yeah.
And
what was the final one? Wicked.
Yeah. Which you know.
Heard of it.
Yeah.
Didn't watch it, but it's a Broadway play. That's where I heard of it.
Yep.
So I heard of 4 out of 10, and I watched 1
Yep.
out of 10. So there was a day when I would have heard of almost all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And if I hadn't seen them all, I would make an effort to try to watch the ones I hadn't seen before the Oscars so I could have an opinion on which was the best one. There was a time when that's how I approached this thing.
Yeah, like what was the best year
you guys-
for that? I think that like the last year that happened.
Go ahead, Tinfoil.
So 1995, let's say 30 years ago, right? Have you heard of these? Okay. Braveheart. Apollo 13.
What are you doing? You're running through them again of 95?
From 30 years ago. Yeah, 95.
That was 30 years ago. Wow.
Yeah.
Have you heard or seen these? Braveheart?
Yeah.
Apollo 13. Babe.
Wow.
The Postman. Sense and Sensibility.
It's got a point.
I mean,
It's monoculture.
Is the Postman? Is the Postman Kevin Costner?
Is
that the one where he was like it's like Waterworld, but he was.
It looks like an Italian film. So no.
To me,
that might be one you haven't seen.
To me, the last time I think the Oscars Best Picture list was really good was 2018.
Yeah, that's
The Shape of Water, Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, Phantom Thread, 3 Billboards, Get Out, Lady Bird. Those were all pretty good. I think that was the last time I really was like, holy crap, all these are pretty dang good.
Well, there's a couple bangers in there for me,
Yeah.
but it's not like what Patrick read from 95. Like
True.
Dunkirk and The Darkest Hour. Those are awesome.
Yeah.
We should go back and see when it went haywire. Like, when did it cease to be a thing that mattered?
I bet.
When did it? Go ahead.
I bet it's around the time of like 2012 to 2013 when we all get on iPhones, we all get on social media, and we all get more caved into our spheres. We just have a lot of politics and sports. But it was more monoculture in that time.
But I think to answer your question before, I think it's definitely still relevant. We all still watch movies. Maybe we don't watch all of these ones as much as maybe because there's so much to watch on Netflix and all these type of things. I think it's still relevant because these are all kind of like huge deals, big directors, big actresses, actors, and I think it's still a relevant thing. Maybe they're not as good because it's hard to do anything new these days because everything keeps kind of getting recycled in movies and TV, but I still think it's pretty big.
Well, all right. I want you to look up something while I just work through the sound real quickly. I want you to look up the Golden Globes. I'm curious which television series were nominated for Golden Globes, and I want to see if it reflects things that we more watch now. But in the meantime, speaking of a bygone era in Hollywood, Gene Hackman passed away. We've talked about it on the Cain Show on Fox. It's suspicious circumstances. His wife and dog passed away as well. Not a carbon monoxide leak, they're saying now. Not necessarily foul play, but they're not ruling it out. Pills thrown around her, but not him. And the latest I've read is it looks like they could have each met their own horrible accident. She had an accident in the bathroom. He falls down, can't get up, or he's 95. Dog is locked in a kennel, and they had all been dead for a while by the time they're found. So, I don't know. And then another legend, Bill Murray showed up on the Joe Rogan podcast this weekend, and there was some funny sound we wanted to listen to together from Bill Murray here on Joe Rogan.
Thank you for doing this. This is a huge honor for me. I'm a giant fan. Forever. Like, since I was a kid. So.
Well, are we going?
Yeah, we're
okay,
live.
good.
So for me, there's certain people I meet where it's like, whoa, okay. And you're one of those.
Well, I have a very different experience. I only know about you what I've heard. I've never heard your show. I had to ask you, are you Joe? Because
Perfect.
I somehow I knew you were like in the fitness, and everyone out there seems to be a weightlifter. And you're outer. Even Danielle seems like she did lower body today. But it's nice to meet you. And people are some people are very, very excited that I've gotten come down here to be on your show.
That's awesome.
So he's like, hey, this is a huge honor. You're a legend my whole life, like since childhood. And he goes, well, we have very different experiences because I don't know who you are, and I've never listened to your show, but everybody says you're a big deal. It's crazy.
So good.
That'll be like
it's crazy how
he's
honest,
one of the guys can do that.
but inoffensive. What's that?
He's one of the guys that can get away with that and be funny. Otherwise, anyone else does that, you're an a-hole completely.
Because he's old.
He does it without even seeming like an a-hole at all.
I know.
Now, it does require, I don't know how Rogan felt about it, but
he didn't care.
You think?
Yeah, no. Joe.
I think it was a little tongue-in-cheek.
I don't know, Rogan.
Joe gets it.
Because he could also just be like an old guy that doesn't use an iPhone.
Yeah, exactly.
So amazing. But everybody says everybody's really excited that I'm on this show. Not me. I don't know who you are. And then you have this amazing moment. So Bill Murray is talking about, I don't know how they got onto this, but they're talking about Bob Woodward of Woodward and Bernstein. And then he's like, yeah, Bob Woodward wrote a book about my buddy, Jim Belushi. Listen.
I read Wired, the book written by, what's his name, Woodward, about Belushi. I read like 5 pages of Wired, and I went, oh my God, they framed Nixon. like all of a sudden I went, oh my God, if this is what he writes about my friend that I've known, for half my adult life, which is completely inaccurate, talking to like the people of the outer circle getting the story. What the hell could they have done to Nixon?
Oh man, I said Jim. I meant John, by the way. So it's pretty. Anytime that's ever happened to me, by the way, it does feel like the same way. Like when somebody writes a story about something you actually know about, then you're like, oh man, it does indict the whole enterprise. And look, journalism. I mean, it's hard. Like Murray is close to Belushi. So Woodward tries to write about Belushi, but he only gets, and Murray goes on to describe it, people like on the outside of the outside who might have known Belushi. So Woodward's job is to try to get closer to the inner circle to get the real him, but it clearly shows that he failed. And then it lets you know once that happens to you, like how you can't let this information just wash over you as though it's the truth. Mm-hmm. What's up, 2 days? What do you have?
So I have the Golden Globes list of TV shows from this year.
Okay.
If you want. So Shogun, which is great, was the winner for Best Television Series Drama. Yeah. And up against that was The Diplomat, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Slow Horse is amazing, Squid Game, and The Day of the Jackal, which is great. Much better list already.
Oh, shoot. I didn't watch any of those other ones.
Really? That list is fantastic.
No.
Slow Horses you would love.
Well, I watched Squid Game season 1. I don't know if that's about season 2. I haven't watched the second season. Mm-hmm. Isn't there a second season of Squid Game?
Yeah,
there is.
I didn't watch it.
It's about season 2. Yeah.
What's Day of the Jackal? Is that about Carlos the Jackal?
It's a remake of the Bruce Willis movie, The Jackal, in the book. He's an assassin.
It's about Carlos the Jackal.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, exactly. Yep. It's really good. Eddie Redmayne. Yeah, it's fantastic.
But the terrorist.
Essentially, yeah.
You watched that show?
Yep.
Oh yeah, I'm into that. I'd be up for that one.
Diplomat's very good too.
Shogun was.
Yeah.
But see, I hear those even, and the ones I haven't watched, I think I've seen something on Slow Horses. I'm not sure, like a trailer maybe.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in all of those than that list of Oscar movies. Like,
totally.
I don't think not only have I never seen those movies or heard of them, I don't think I ever will. I won't ever go watch Anon. Is that what won?
Anora. You're not curious?
Best Picture? Not yet. Not yet.
See, that piques my curiosity.
And winning an Oscar doesn't do it. Like, oh, I got to go see that. You know what I mean?
The new Robert De Niro movie, or not movie.
Show.
It's like 6 parts of 40 minutes.
0 Day.
That was really good.
It was okay.
Dan's watched that.
Yeah. It was a little it was a little too obvious. Everything's kind of just thrown out.
Heavy-handed propaganda.
Yeah. I didn't think so. I didn't mind it.
I think we're in a TV era.
There's a certain
I think so.
There's a certain television personality that was definitely used as reference in that show.
Tucker.
Yeah.
I didn't totally think that. Maybe a little.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe. Yeah. Okay. I see it. It's worth
All
a
right.
watch.
The Oscars, they don't matter. I think, unless you tell me differently on the chat right now, I'd be curious what I'm getting wrong there. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Hope you will. Download, rate, and review at Spotify or Apple, and I will see you again next time.